Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Wednesday Career Refocus at 7, where we talk about interesting careers that are beyond the ordinary careers that we are told to dream about since childhood. The goal of this series is to talk with people who are in very offbeat and very interesting careers and to learn from them valuable takeaways which we can apply and learn and apply in our own journey. I'm very excited to introduce you to today's guest, Saikat Pyne, who is a marketer and creative and a podcaster. So, Saikat is an award winning digital communications specialist, creative, and podcaster. Besides his role handling digital communications for one of the largest fintech conglomerates in the world, he's also the host of You Inc. podcast and blogs avidly at the intersection of business, influence, and design. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Saikat.
Hello,
Hi,
guys.
Saikat. Thank you
Lovely
so
to
much
be
for
here.
being here today.
It's
So,
amazing to be on the show with you, Anisha.
definitely, I'm so happy that you agreed to be a part of this. So, for our guest's sake, could you please introduce yourself a little bit in your own words as well?
Sure, sure. So I'd what you'd call a journalist by chance, a marketer by choice in some ways, right? I started out as a founding team member in this business news website called Business Insider, and we helped launch that brand in India. And then I've held marketing and PR roles in some media brands, some fintech brands, the likes of Paytm, the Times Internet Group, and I currently work for a fintech conglomerate here in India.
That's very interesting, Saika. Thank you so much for sharing about yourself. So, I'm going to dive straight into the first question. Since we are talking about a career refocus, right? So, you have had so many jumps in so many sectors that are different from your degree. So, can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about your story, how it started, and how it's going currently?
Sure. So I started out my career from journalism school. You see, back in the days, around a decade back, when we were really entering, the first phase of our career, internet was quite a new thing, right? So YouTube was still a thing. People were still accessing a lot of information on the internet, but it was not as readily accessible. Data was not as readily accessible. So I realized that I wanted a career in the media, but the most readily accessible career in the media was to be a journalist, right? So just out of fluke, I applied to a bunch of journalism schools and I happened to get through one. On the day of placement, where I was kind of confused about whether I should take on a career in digital media. You see, back in the days, print media was the thing, right? You would look up to these very iconic print media journalists, and TV was the cutting edge of media. It seems like from a different era altogether, but it was just a couple of years ago, really, because digital has taken off in such a big way. It's impossible nearly for most of us to imagine a life without digital media. Back in the days, the likes of Karan Thapar were my idols, and I wanted to have a career in the media. So it just seemed to me to be the most obvious thing to do, to apply to media school, to journalism school. And I happened to stumble upon a couple of journalism schools, and on the last day I realized that there was this new wave of digital media coming through back in the early 2010s, right? And it seemed to me very obscure, and we'd often discuss this in lectures in journalism school about the cutting edge digital media work that's happening globally. But in India, again, most of the business news publications, they were just dabbling in digital media, weren't very confident about what to really do with it. Most mainstream media publications didn't have their digital media outlets. So it just seemed to me to be a bit of the unknown. that I wanted to explore. And on the advice of one of my friends, I just jumped on the bandwagon, really didn't put much of a thought into where this is headed. um, One of the biggest business news publications, the Mint, was not yet established back then, right? So we can some of the media outlets that are really mainstream today, both in business media and main lines, were not established on digital. So you can imagine how ancient it sounds. But mind you, it's just like 7 8 years back, right? So I started out, and in business media back in the days, it was about a bunch of oldies saying sprouting jargons that would not land with anybody, right? Like we speak about consuming information on digital today, and it's about my favorite creator speaking directly to me, in a way, in a lingo that I understand, right? In a way, in a lingo that resonates with me. Back then, media was not that. Back then, media was about I will speak in a way that matters to me and I feel is important, and you better learn to speak and learn my lingo, right? So, Business Insider really changed that, and we wanted to transform business journalism into something that could be accessible for the 20 something, who's starting to work in. So Flipkart and Snapdeal were really startups back in the day. It was not cool to work at a Flipkart or Amazon or Snapdeal in India. So we wanted to make it relevant, business media relevant for the Indian millennial audience. And that was really the baptizing for me. The introduction to digital media and what it would mean, that started to make sense for me. And I got very, very excited. I also realized I was not cut out to be a very good business journalist, because that's never what I set out to do, right? People go to business school with this, hype, that I'll change the world, I'll share a lot of new information with people, and I'll find out, I'll dig up the truth. That was never me. I wanted to tell stories, and tell stories in a way that resonated with the audience. It didn't have to be, um, it didn't have to be as a journalist. It could be as a marketer. So when the founder of Paytm took a liking to some of my work, and I got a job offer from Paytm, I joined Paytm as a founding team member in their PR team, right? Um, and after working in Paytm for some time, it's been one after the other for me. But I guess primarily I have held that thought in mind, which is I am always driven by this notion of telling stories that land with a target audience. And I'm always looking for the story, and I'm always looking for interesting ways to tell them. And that's pretty much been the guiding light for my career all throughout these years.
That's really amazing. And I think we all live for stories, right? Stories are what connects humans, irrespective of where they are from. So we
Absolutely.
have a question, Saikat, from Sonia. She's just asked, journalism is a part of mass communication or different?
Journalism is definitely a part of mass communication, but is all mass communication journalism? No, that's not the case, right? Why is that? Quite simply because what is mass communication? When you're communicating with the masses, which is one to many communication, right? So technically, you could say YouTube is mass communication as well, but is YouTube journalism? Yeah, you could do some form of journalism on YouTube, but it doesn't have to be, right? So journalism, by definition, is a part of mass communication, but not all mass communication is journalism, Sonia.
Great answer. And that reminds me, people, whoever you're watching right now, if you have any questions for Sakat, please feel free to leave it in the comments. I'll make sure he addresses those questions. Speaking of that, we have a question from Binati as well. And she asked, she said it's a little judgmental question from her. So the question is, doesn't making it relevant dilute the good journalism of it all? So what's your take on it, Sakat?
Sure. So good journalism is about finding facts and telling them in an easy to digest manner. If I am sharing information, if I am digging up facts from whichever, from let's say a business, or let's say something has happened, some wrongdoing has happened, but I am telling the story in a way, maybe jargon led, and maybe not in an easy to consume manner. It is making it that much harder for my target audience to consume the fact that I'm trying to communicate. So I would say good journalism is about, definitely, it's about demystifying, de-jargonizing, and unearthing the truth. As much as that is a part of journalism, I'd say as much of it, a part of journalism, is about trying to really make it palatable for the audience. That doesn't have to mean that you have to dumb it down. You don't have to dumb it down, but you'll have to make it easier for people to be able to accept it, to be able to consume that information. So I'd say that is also good journalism. And the more you make an effort, it could be via immersive storytelling, it might be via an audio book, or it might be something like an infographic. It could be anything really. It's a step in the right direction towards good journalism. Absolutely, that's what I feel.
That's a really, really great answer. And I really love the way you tackled that controversial question. So thanks for the answer. So, Sakat, my next question to you is, how did your path venture towards a career in media? What was your first experience as a content creator like?
Right. So, well, quite honestly, I liked writing back in the days, and it's the most cliche answer ever. I'd always contribute to the college magazine and all of that. So I always had a knack towards writing. So that's that. But I'd say writing as a content creator is very different from writing an essay or writing for your own sake in your own blog, right? My
Yeah, of course.
primary learning in terms of writing for an audience started in journalism school, and a lot of it started to be refined in my first job, because we were really the first digital media publication in India which was using analytics. Our team was using analytics to realize and constantly update us on audience trends. What did it mean for us to write about a topic? What are the most popular topics? Does that mean that we have to create content on the most popular topics at all time? Definitely not. But we were aware of what the audience wanted, the formats that the audience was consuming a lot of information. And I think that started to help in me in creating a content which will then be more palatable to the audience. So I think most content writers hate analytics because they feel that it will curb their creativity. I, from my very first job, started to take analytics as a way to empower teams in creating new content, and in creating exciting pieces of content that became more relevant with the people. So I think that was something that really helped.
All right, amazing. That's like very interesting, and thanks for sharing it. So we have a question from Dominic. So Dominic is saying he recently had an interesting discussion between content writing and journalism. How creativity has very little space when you're reporting something, reporting the facts, right? So what is your take on this? Like, how can you be creative while also doing good journalism?
I remember the editor of Mint came to our college back in 2014. Mint, Dominic, if you're not aware, is one of the biggest business news dailies in India. It's available online as well. And he said something, and I'll just say what he said because it struck with me, like struck a chord with me. He said, "You can't be creative with the facts of the story." So let's, you can't, because that's creative writing, then, right, Dominic? If journalism is about telling the facts as it is, so the facts are sacrosanct. You can't mess with the facts, right? You can't get creative with the facts. What you can get creative with is how do you simplify and then find a story from the data. So let's say, very simple. So in my first assignment as a journalist, I happened to uh, report on the annual earnings reports of Vodafone. At the, like, think about it, it's very boring. Like Vodafone India, a bunch of 40 somethings on stage uh, presenting how much money they've made over the past year, right? It's very, very boring for a 20 something. But then when you really start to get into those Excel sheets, you start to make sense of those balance sheets, then a story would emerge about how the company back in the days is starting to invest into um, 4G infrastructure, right? So creativity, and then you cherry pick those data pointers, and it then starts to make more sense to you. And you present it in a creative way. So I think creativity in journalism is about presenting of that content. You can't get creative with the data and with the facts. So don't be creative with the facts, be creative with the way you tell the story. And I think that's a way to go.
Right, and since you mentioned that you loved storytelling and you love telling stories, so this must have been like a very, challenging, like you must have taken up as a challenge, like how can I be creative while telling the story? So I think that's a
Absolutely.
very valuable takeaway. Amazing.
Absolutely.
So we
Absolutely.
have a question from Sasi Rekha. Thanks for this amazing question. So how do you make sure that the articles you write are as accurate as possible? Because because since you're a journalist, you have access to so many people, right? Potentially millions of people, and can impact indirectly in many ways. So what is your take on this?
Right. So we were reaching around 11 million UAVs, unique users, back in September 2015. That was around the time, around 6 months from launch, right? So, of course, there is a certain responsibility when you're reporting facts. You would have at least three independent sources confirm a fact if it's not published in the media as a part of a press release or whatever, to ensure that whatever you're reporting is factual. So that's the first and the most uh, important check right there, to ensure that you're only reporting facts. The second thing is, you'd always have opinion from industry experts. So that'd be, you'd reach out to analysts, you'd reach out to people um, who are in the know-how and are industry veterans, and it will really then help you demystify some parts of the story that you can't unravel. I think of a story like a puzzle, right? You put the pieces together, and the missing pieces, somebody else is going to help you get those pieces right. But until you're sure that all of the pieces in the puzzle are there, you don't run with the story. You don't run with the story purely because it might get you a couple of hits. And you definitely don't run with the story unless you are absolutely sure uh, about the integrity of each of your sources. So that's very important. You're on mute.
All right, sorry about that. So yeah, thank you for the answer. So the next question, Sakat, is a very interesting and a very relevant question for everyone who's currently getting inspired by listening to you speak today. So if you had to retrace your steps in your career, what would your journey look like?
I don't think I would have changed anything. I think being to journalism school helped me focus on chasing the story. And I think when when you learn, when you go to media school and some people are busy learning the tools are going to change, right? Every couple of years, given how fast media is evolving, it's a matter of a year or two before you swap your tools for something new, right? Because new platforms will arise, and new trends, consumption trends, audience consumption and media consumption trends would come up. So I'd say uh, the learning that I received in terms of how do you find the story, how do you chase the story, how do you finish the story, and how do you then uh, put it together in a very sort of palatable manner, that has really helped my career in the media. And I think that really helped me orient myself whenever I was telling a story, be it through, a press release. A press release is a story, a video is a story. Everything that you're trying to say in some ways has to make sense in its entirety, and in that ways I always think of it as a story. You are not, when you're thinking digital, when you're thinking platform agnostic, as we call it in media school, it's not about you thinking I have a podcast, how do I have something and retrofit it in that audio format. It's about, I have a story, what's the best way of telling it. And in some ways I keep saying, I let the story decide how it wants to be told. And that's the same thing that I do in my career, as a marketer and as a PR person as well. I would often receive a brief about a new product or a service launch, and I then decide what are the platforms that would best lend to this story of this new product launch. And that's how I've always gone about it, be it in my career as a journalist, be it my career as a marketer, really.
That's really awesome. Thanks, Sakat. So, Harshil has actually asked what the video is about. So, basically, Harshil, this is a part of a series where we are talking to people with interesting careers and we are listening to, how they went about making the career choices and what landed them here. And today's guest is Sakat, who has a degree in journalism and currently is a digital communications specialist and a creator. So, we are listening to Sakat's story. And second, your my next question for you is there, aside from your full time job, is there anything else that you like to do outside work?
Oh, sure. So I have a podcast called the You Incorporated podcast. It's live on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the major podcasting platforms. Guys, feel free to check out the podcast.
I'm going to
We prime.
share the link of the podcast in the comments so you guys can
Oh,
check
that'd
it
be
out.
great. That'd be great. So we primarily host founders, creators, marketers, people who are working on the intersection of data, creativity, business, and it's a lot of very interesting conversation. We are about to take one of our episodes live just today, later tonight. So a lot of interesting guests. I'm also working on a book called You Incorporated. It's about how anybody can build an audience for themselves at near zero cost, and the book is hopefully going to be launched later next year. So looking forward to that as well. Apart from it, I write quite avidly. I have a bunch of blogs. If you'd interested in reading about my thoughts on content, influence, business, design, you could just go to blog.sakatpine.com, and I write some stuff there nearly every week. So I blog, I have my own podcast, and I have a book coming up, and that's pretty much taking up most of my free time.
That's really a lot of things you're doing, a lot of hats you're wearing, and it's really commendable. So, definitely kudos and respect for doing all these amazing things at the same time. So
Thank you.
second, since we want to help people who also, wants to get into a career like you. So my next question is, if there's a person who's looking to be where you are currently, what should they know before dreaming about this career?
Right. So I'd say if you'd want to be a marketer or a content creator slash media person, pretty much anything to do with media, I think there are a couple of things that you'd need to realize. I think number one, you'd need to think of stories in a platform agnostic manner. I think that is very, very important. If you would like to be a content creator, it's important for you to start conceptualizing ideas for conversations, for articles, for blogs, whatever it might be, in a way where you can then adapt it to multiple formats. So don't think of ideas purely in a very specific format. Start thinking of your ideas and in multi format manner, right? And I think that just that habit, when you are in school or in college, try to experiment. Like, you can launch your own podcast for free. It's available today. You can launch a blog on Medium for free. Multiple of these platforms are available to you for free. You can have an Insta page for free, right? So start creating content. I think number one is start creating content. Get into the habit of it. um, Content creation is something where you learn by doing, and I think that is reflective in terms of the hires that a lot of companies are making these days as well, right? In the recent episode of the You Incorporated podcast that's going live today, I'm having a chat with Sharbujit Malik, who's the co-founder and chief business officer of InstaHire. It's this very popular job search platforms that uses AI, and has like 10,000 brands hiring like some top talent, like the likes of Amazon hire candidates from InstaHire. And I asked him on the podcast about what it is, in terms of marketing, PR, media roles, what it is that brands are really looking for. And he said across the board, brands are looking for skill. So just the skill of storytelling, the skill of being able to create content is going to take you, farther than most other skills in media. That's one. Number two, I'd say start learning bits and pieces of digital media. So, most of it is available to you for free or for very cheap, these e-learning courses via Udemy, Skillshare, and the likes, right? So honing your start honing your digital media slash social media skills, right? It doesn't have to be only about creation, it's also about social media management, right? Some of these tools again are available for you for cheap, right? Scheduling tools, let's say Buffer, you can schedule up to 10 posts on Buffer for free, right? So you can pick on these tools and start getting into the habit of learning how to be comfortable on digital media. And quite naturally, digital media is the future of all media, right? The rest of it you can always learn when you go to college. So that's the second. Number three, marketing slash career in the media, it's primarily driven by your caliber. So while of course you getting into a reputed journalism school or a reputed media school or a reputed ad school, or maybe an MBA college that would land you at a marketing manager role at a brand, is going to take you, it's going to get your foot through the door. What is really going to take you further off in your career is your skill to constantly learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because today, the media cycle that we are going through, uh, th- every couple of years, the concept of media is going to change, right? What media was 5 years ago, it's not. So if you are trying to influence people, you'll influence people via mass media, and the definition of mass media is changing every 5 years. So it's important for you to keep updated with that as well, while you pursue your education, and constantly have that idea of always trying to stay ahead of the curve in terms of what are the latest trends. How is an average Indian consuming information? What are the main channels? How can I try to influence? Give it some thought, read as much as possible, and always be open to learning and unlearning. I think a lot of people who were experts 5 years ago have fallen by the wayside in media, in journalism, in PR, in marketing, simply because they refuse to get onto the digital bandwagon. And in the media space, what really matters is, are you at the cutting edge of where the audience is? If you are ready to learn and put your brand's message where the audience is, you are in. If not, you are out. And I think as long as you're open to learning that, you're in the right place.
These are actually so actionable, and I think these tips are valuable for any person who's looking to start in any creative career. Basically, post online, build a portfolio online, then keep learning, keep upskilling yourself, and also stay like ahead of the trends so you know what's going on, where the audience is currently. Really amazing. Thank you. So, since the second step is about learning skills, right? And you also mentioned some free YouTube videos and courses. So, do you have any book or podcast or any recommendations for our listeners that were helpful to you while you were starting on your journey?
Right. So there's this guy called Neil Patel. He has his YouTube channel. There's the Marketing Book Podcast. It's the best marketing podcast in history, probably. And what happens on the podcast is the host will invite the author of a different marketing book every episode, and you'd hear directly from the author about the book and some key insights from the book. So it's the best podcast ever for any marketer. So that's about the YouTube channel and the podcast. I'd say, in terms of, if you'd want to read marketing books, there are multiple books, like, say, there's Ogilvy on advertising, there's Content Incorporated. There are multiple books. You could just go to Amazon and there's like a host of books. There are just so many. I don't want to single anything out. There's so much good literature on marketing. I was just reading one today morning about building a story brand, right? So that's one lovely book. So I'd say the best way to consume information on marketing is to find a couple of people that you resonate with and you realize they are making sense to you. Start following them. So Neil Patel is this one person. I can say, eyes closed, you follow his YouTube videos, and that's more um, relevant marketing education than any B school can ever give you, because he's speaking about sort of on the ground actionable tips that you can actually apply. And I've done this on my job, and it's done wonders for me.
Incredible. Thank you. I'm also a very big fan of Neil Patel's channel. I've learned so much from his videos. So, definitely 100% recommend. So, Saikat, thank you for answering all our questions. And to everyone who's listening right now, we're going to wrap up this interview in a few minutes. So, if you have any questions or any comments, please do let us know and I'll make sure Saikat answers them. So, Saikat, my last question to you is like, this is the question I end all my interviews with. So, for our listeners who are tuning in today, do you have any tips or any advice for them that you think would be helpful?
Right. I'd say create content. I'd say nothing teaches you marketing and content creation better than creating content. Just create content, whichever format, whichever platform. You could launch a newspaper for all we care, but it doesn't matter. The format doesn't matter. Marketing and slash PR slash content creation is something where you learn by doing. So just do more of it, and that's the way to get better in the job. And that's how most good marketers um, have learned the craft. There is no magic pill where you go into a course and spend a couple of months and you're suddenly the best marketer. You might have a degree, but you would never have the caliber or the experience that you'd learn by doing. And it could be a pet project. It doesn't have to be the best. um, Content creation is where I speak of this philosophy where you get ready, shoot, and then aim. You don't have to land the best content every time. You don't have to produce a Mona Lisa, right? It's not about the best piece of content now at any point of time. You should aspire for the best, but keep creating content. As long as you're open to that, I think most of marketing is just that, creating content that is useful to your audience or captures their attention in some ways. You're either informing or you're entertaining people. That's the goal of marketing.
I love it. I also totally agree with it. And this is something I keep telling people who follow me as well, that no matter what you are, what you aim to do, you should definitely have a presence online. People should know where to find your work online. And if the only way of doing that is by posting content on any platform, and by doing so you are building social proof, you're building credibility for yourself, and you're also building like an online portfolio, right? So anyone who's looking to hire you, they can directly go to your portfolio and look at your existing content. So it's definitely helpful. All right. So thank you so much, Sakat, for having the patience to answer all my questions and all the questions of the audience. And thank you so much, everyone who tuned in today. Thanks for your interesting and engaging questions. It was really amazing having you all here today. So next Wednesday, I'm going to be back with another new guest. So make sure you tune in next Wednesday as well. And that's all. I'm signing off now. Bye, everyone. Bye, Sakat.
Bye bye, everybody.